No pressure.
Great.
And we are
So,
live. So welcome to everybody watching this live stream to our first Schools and Agents live interview, the things we get to do during COVID period. So we also started experimenting with live interviews or live discussions. And for our first one, we decided to bring in Sudesh Prasad. Hi, Sudesh. How are things in the
hello,
UK?
greetings from warm, sunny Cambridge. Probably not as nice as in Malta, but
It is
we don't have.
nice and sunny at the moment, but for some reason my phone keeps telling me that we're supposed to have a thunderstorm. So I'm not sure. Possibly Cambridge is a better option at the moment. So
Well,
we'll see.
are you guys able to go and jump in the ocean, or are you in lockdown?
Well, first of all, we jump in the sea. It's the Mediterranean Sea.
All right.
I always like to do that.
Are you
Well,
allowed to jump
right
in the Mediterranean off the
right
coast?
now, it is possible to do it. And at first, I did have my first dip last week. It was freezing. But I thought,
Freezing standards.
no, freezing, properly freezing. I promise
Well,
you it
I
was
mean,
freezing.
I I wasn't. I didn't grow up in England, but there are. The English will jump into the ocean when it's 10 degrees, and it's something I don't understand. Having grown up in America, where you don't go in the ocean unless it's warm. But
No. So this was around 10 degrees, yes. And for me, that is freezing. So I normally don't jump in unless it's much warmer than that. But I decided, might as well. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if Malta will be on full lockdown. Right now, we are on partial lockdown over here. So pretty much like everywhere else, we only go out. We are only encouraged to go out to get essentials, but other than that, restaurants, clubs, everything else is closed. So,
schools.
but schools are closed, obviously. The airport is closed or pretty much closed. So yes,
Really, there's no international travel or
no,
even
no. In any case, nobody wants anybody to enter their countries at the moment.
no ferries. So no ferries to Italy.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right. So to jump into today's topic and to give our viewers a bit of an update on the reason why we decided to go with you first. A couple of weeks ago, we published an article that caused a little bit of panic, and I remember discussing this topic with you, and I did tell you, Sudesh, this is going to cause panic, but perhaps it's a
Yeah.
good kind of panic because people need to know these things. And I'm referring to an article which I'm going to post in the live feed over here for our viewers to be able to access.
Yeah.
And it was the article related to the fact that classes are being hacked on Zoom. And that in itself is a huge bomb because a lot of schools have now resorted to Zoom for their live online lessons. So I'm going to pass the ball back onto your court, Sudesh.
Yeah.
What issues are schools coming up with, and how much of a threat is this, this hacking?
Well, one of the first of all, Zoom or Google Hangouts or the Citrix-based one from uh, WebEx and things like that. They're all great platforms. We couldn't be doing this without this kind of technology. One of the problems that we found is that schools jumped into it very quickly and then realized things like not so much hacking, which does occur, but giving out insecure links that can be reused or um, spending a lot of time fixing the technology, which took away from sort of learning time. So one of the problems is that a lot of schools were letting teachers set up their Zoom classes. So you had all these different links going around, which leads to a bit of confusion. and also that they were reusable rather than one time. There are a lot of security settings that most video platforms have, and I always like to say that if it's free, you get what you pay for. So there are some free aspects of Zoom, but they need to be, you need to research it and do a little bit of pre-planning so that you don't have things like, I don't know, spending time trying to figure out why somebody can't log on or somebody can log on. Things like setting up a waiting room like we had before this to make sure that voice works, video works, you don't have glitches, you can see people, I can see people joining the stream, and just overall managing it as you would a part of your school. Some of our clients have come to us and said, look, how do we manage this? And we've worked with them so that it's a part of their system, not a emergency, what do I do now, panic. I think we all, this is not a short-term fix. It will at some point end. And we're trying to help people get a managed approach to it. And we have a few of our clients have been using it very successfully, whether it's Zoom or any other platform.
But to tie in with what you were saying, Sudesh, I think one of the main issues that people in our industry have been facing is that a lot of them, or a lot of our schools, have decided to go online kind of as a reaction to something that has happened. And whilst obviously we totally understand that in a lot of cases there was no other option, potentially in 100% of the cases there was no other option because schools had to close down and because students had to be sent back to their countries, how can schools take advantage of this time in order to perhaps invest in something for the future? Hopefully this will never happen again. And I say this first and foremost for my sake, and I'm sure for the sake of every other business owner in this industry. But other things can happen. And if nothing else happens, which is always what we keep our fingers crossed for, it might be the case that people will want to start offering distance learning in conjunction, in combination with the face-to-face classes that they might currently be offering. So how can people take advantage, Sudesh, of this moment to invest in the future of their schools?
Well, a couple of points. Number one, yes, everybody has done this as a sort of emergency. What do I do? At Intrinsiq, we've been working remotely like this for 4 years now. We haven't had an office for about 2 or 3 years. So the first thing to do, I think, is realize that online learning is great, but it's never going to all move to online learning, especially in the language travel industry, because people need immersion and they need to be in that country. So the first thing is, I think that this should be looked at as a part of an overall strategy. And certainly we have been working with some clients who saw this coming as the future and to increase what they can do. For example, if you have let's say a 6-week course and then somebody goes home, they can have a refresher course for a little while via online to sort of keep the continuity. So it's part of an overall strategic plan. The other point is that now, because you have no other choice and things are closed, is a good time to, not as a reaction because the initial panic has passed, but to look at, okay, now we have time to test this. Now we have time to implement this. What part of our offering could we use this in when things go back to whatever the new normal will be? I think that is one of the hurdles that I've found when I'm talking to people, is because they say, oh no, we don't do online learning. It's not a case of one or the other. It's a case of finding the right mix to use online and have that integrated with your overall plan, not as something that you do on the side or something that's quickly put together and then falls by the wayside. I think that is one of the issues, and I can't stress it enough, that when it's not slow, but you don't have to manage pupils in physical places, you have the time to look at when they do come back, how you're going to offer it to them. And one of the things we obviously stress is integration, so that you're not then sitting with a spreadsheet and a pencil and a piece of paper trying to figure out which URL you're sending where. And this is what we're very, very keen on, is we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we can integrate these things. Some of our clients have been doing it for years. Others have completely closed during this, and others are now very seriously looking at, okay, we can do everything online now, but in 6 months, what's the landscape going to be like? So,
Mhm.
another thing is, I've been reading obviously lots of industry papers and also university intake, and there is still a lot of hesitation about online learning, because people understand that it's not all going to be online learning. Even though it seems like that can happen, it's always going to be a part, and it needs to be tightly integrated with, your overall offering to students,
And
agencies.
that's what we are always talking about in our industry. Obviously, we never want to take away, despite the fact that both our companies are based online, we never want to take away from the face-to-face aspect of things, because we all believe that it is important for students to visit countries and to get a full experience that they will never be able to get online. But yes, it might be a solution for those schools who are looking at integrating, and this is kind of the word that we are using even for the title of this discussion today, and it is the word that we have been using also for the titles of the various articles that we've published. Integrating video conferencing, so not replacing. We don't want to replace face-to-face lessons, but integrating video conferencing might be a very good strategy for a way forward for schools, also to ensure that they are never in the situation of panic that they found themselves in a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
when a lot of governments around the world were telling people, close down your schools, go home. So one of the things that we discussed, and I found this personally really amusing, even though I would never want it to happen in one of my online meetings, was that were some of the hiccups, some of the issues that schools encounter when they don't integrate Zoom or any other video conferencing platform properly into their online lessons. Can you share, even perhaps with our viewers today, some of these really strange and uncomfortable situations?
Well, not so much strange, but people watching this, you'll be. Can you hear me? Can you
Yes.
hear me? Can you hear? Exactly my point. So, that's one. If if you're doing online lessons, the first thing you want to be, and I've been to many conferences. The idea is you promote the most professional face of your school, and training is important. I mean, when you were just leading up to this, I was thinking, one of the things that schools do is they have staff meetings. Staff meetings can happen like this, and then loop in, and just like you would train your staff to I don't know, do health and safety or whatever it is you do, you need to have these sorts of things. So, for example, I think what you're looking for is things like a waiting room, so that you're not wasting your students' time, because students are going to be mostly younger. Students are going to be used to using technology. They don't want to come in and find that the audio doesn't work, that it's glitchy, that you don't have enough bandwidth, which is a consideration. All of a sudden, bandwidth, you need to have that so we can have a clear conversation. If you have 30 people logging in and your school is not set up for it, you don't look professional. People aren't going to come back. As with anything, you have to. So things like having roll call, a waiting room, so the teacher says, okay, you're here, we're going to start in 5 minutes. Okay, you're here, we're going to start in 2 minutes. So that when you finally get to 12:15, when your class is supposed to start, everybody's online, everybody knows what's happening. and it's more like what is expected in the rest of your school. So some of those things, with the can you hear me, can you see me, the voice dropping out, the glitching, all of that stuff needs to be thought through, because if you think you're wasting 10 minutes of every class,
Exactly.
those kind of technological problems need to be looked at as I don't know, as you would a drinking fountain. You can't have it running out of water before you replace the canister, kind of thing. These are things that we take for granted because we use them privately, but in a professional setting, there's certain things that have to happen. And also, again, getting back to our integration mantra is that we can pull all of those things, like how are you going to do the attendance for an online class? Oh, I'll write it down on a piece of paper. Well, that's you're using video conferencing and a piece of paper. What we're talking about is thinking it through so that all of that's done in a methodical way using systems that schools would already have.
And to tie in with this, for example, one of the questions that I have personally been asked by a school is, how am I going to make sure that lessons are actually taking place? As a director of studies, as a school manager, as an academic manager, can I pop in from one class to another like I would normally do in a regular, when things are normal? Can I still pop in? Can I still check that everybody is okay? Can I pop in to see if the teacher needs anything, if the students need anything? Will they be able to do it with your integration?
Yes, because we had, simple answer, we had somebody ask us that, and I said, how do you know the classes are happening at your school when you're sitting in your room on the third floor? He said, oh, I can pop in. I said, well, exactly the same. One of the things we've done is we had a client that wanted to schedule video conferencing URLs to go out ahead of time. So somebody at this school can now very quickly look up what's happening, what the class register is for that class, and they'll have the URL. So if they want to pop in, they can pop in, see who's there, who's not there, say hello, and leave, depending on obviously how they've set up their particular video conferencing software. And also having class registers that know who to tell 30 minutes before class makes it easier on teachers. They can get a printout, a PDF, an email, a text, whatever. What we're doing is sending by SMS and a backup email, so that you can very quickly look up who's supposed to be where, as you would in a normal school. And more importantly, if somebody, for example, wanted to pop into this, they could drop in, see who's there. For example, I can see Corinne. Hi, Corinne. is checked in, and then I can leave. So again, this is just using a different kind of technology to be part of an overall plan that they already have.
Okay. No, that is indeed very interesting. So these, what we are discussing over here, are some of the questions that schools ask us in relation to integrating video conferencing in their online lessons. Another question that comes up is, how do I make sure that people who have not paid for this online class don't come in? Because we have heard cases of people coming in and disrupting lessons, even if it is online. So just like in a normal school setting, you would make sure that people who are not students in the school don't come in and don't disrupt lessons. How do I make sure that this doesn't happen online? Because that is one of the reasons why we decided to launch that article, because we've heard of cases, and you guys have told us of cases of people who have not been invited, who have not been given a link, who have hacked or whatever into the system and entered the classroom. What do you do to make sure that this doesn't happen?
Well, one of the things we've done is obviously GDPR still exists, security still exists. So we like to use SMS. Some of our clients want to back up, so that a student would get a one-time link, which would be, sorry, that's my front door bell. Hopefully somebody's in the house. Um, they would get a one-time link, and you can have settings that say this link is only good for this period of time.
Okay.
You can set that up on your video conferencing. For example, I think Zoom does it. We also have a mechanism whereby we can generate one-off URLs that are only good for a specific time. You can have multiple login, as you would in a school. If you walked in, the receptionist is an analog check. We would have a digital check to say, okay, you have this link, but you also need a 4-digit code that's only good for that
Exactly.
day. You don't have to manage that because our systems can do that. We can say, okay, if it's this day, this is the algorithm that generates this code.
Okay.
So like with a lot of banking, when you try and do something
Exactly.
online, it sends you a text saying, enter this. So we can make it as secure and as complex as clients need, because sometimes you go overboard, and it's also very easy for a teacher to say there should be 10 people in this class. I have 11. Who are you? Click, you're gone. So again, it's depending on what the school already has. Some people have swipe cards, so you can't get into bigger buildings. It's a similar thing.
Exactly.
Just thinking of a different technology, but using the same strategies.
Okay. And the big question, because obviously, and this is why I wanted to leave it towards perhaps the end of the discussion, in the sense that obviously a lot of people in our industry are currently facing big financial challenges.
Yeah.
Something like this, I mean, how much would it set a school back to integrate such a system?
If they're already using one of our systems, then we're looking probably, every school is different. And this is why.
Exactly. Yes. But obviously, I want to give our viewers an idea of how much we're talking about, because you're discussing and you're talking about a lot of, to me, because I'm not technologically minded, something that sounds extremely complex, and probably like other non-technologically minded people, in our heads, complex equals expensive. So can you, that's why I'm asking the
To put a
question.
number on it, you're looking at probably 2,000 euros to set it all up, test it, and roll it out. Again, it depends on what systems you're already using. If you're using Intrinsiq, and depending on the complexity, it could take that. If you're not using Intrinsiq, we can set up very simple systems to do that, and then at some point integrate. But overall,
so sorry, I'm going to stop you for a moment, Sudesh. So this is even possible for schools who are not currently using Intrinsiq. You can even help those schools.
We can set up a platform, sure. We would have to find out what they're using. Even if it's a simple platform that only manages URLs, that pulls data from existing class lists, yes, we can do that. Again, some people might be using spreadsheets, others might be using server-based software, others might be using another system. As long as we can get access to a school's data that they want to give us, i.e. the minimum, classes, teacher lists, student lists, we can pull them, put them somewhere, and then generate a code or have a user put in, okay, this is the Zoom URL for today, click send, and it will send it to the right people at the right time automatically. Even we can schedule, weeks in advance. So it all depends on what people are already using and to what extent they want to automate it, because obviously we can, automate it as we've done for some schools for until they go back online, offline.
And how much time are we talking about? How long would it take you to integrate all of this?
Again, it depends. If you're already using Intrinsiq, we can do it fairly quickly because we have the capacity at the moment and we know our systems and how to do it. a week, 2 weeks, if somebody came to me today and said, look, I have these systems, this is my database, here's the access to it, can you set up a portal whereby my director of studies could see it? Yeah, it could take a couple of weeks of back and forth planning, making sure, most importantly, testing to
And
make sure
training,
that.
because you also train people on how to use the system. So you don't just do the IT work, the software and the coding, and you leave them there. You also train, because this is something that you and I talk about, and this is something that really comes out in our discussions, because you always stress it, Ari, a lot, and you're always telling me, we don't just give the software to the people and leave them there. We train them and we are available to help them and to answer any questions they might need, which is, again, I mean, we're putting everything in the context of the current period that we're living in, because it is unprecedented, it is special. But even over and above all of that, because this is also what we're talking about today, we're not just trying to use distance learning as a means to an end. We are also encouraging people to integrate this into their school management systems. So this is something that you guys help with all year long, not just when there is COVID.
And yeah, one of the things that we think, well, we know sets Intrinsiq apart is there are many software providers and there are many providers of systems to the international sectors, education sector. We know that. You can go out and find something online, you can have a recommendation. What we've always said is we don't have an off-the-shelf system that you buy that a software house is rubber stamped. The whole thing for us is understanding the workflow of a school. Sure, 90% of schools might have the same things. They have classes, they have teachers, they have lists, they have agents, they have accommodation. It's that 10 to 20% where the workflow is different. And we have usually an easy time with training because we ask people, well, how do you do this? They say, well, I do it like this, this, and this. And if it seems logical to us and there's no way to improve that, we build and tailor the software around the workflow of the school. I remember once I was doing, years ago, when I first started, we were doing some training and the accounts person said, oh, that button's exactly where I need it to be. Because I said, well, you told us at this point is where I think it was a pro forma invoice goes out. So yes, we provide training and support, but it's more a case of understanding how schools do what they do and then matching whatever systems they have as well as what we can provide, whether it's a complete system or, a part of it.
Exactly.
That's the key thing. And that is something that's becoming more and more evident with COVID is that people have said, oh yeah, you guys have been saying that we should integrate it because now you can walk across
And
the
then the
hall
penny drops.
on a piece of paper, but you can press a button and it goes to, I don't know, across the island in your case or across the continent to somebody who's at home doing the invoicing or somebody who's doing next week's class schedules or talking with accommodation providers, all this stuff. And that's a very key point is that's why we're not certainly the cheapest out there, but in the long run, our software works for people because we build it around their workflow.
And I think that is extremely important because it also highlights the topic of today's discussion. You understand not just the importance of integrating video conferencing into online lessons, but you understand the importance of integrating video conferencing into a school's online lessons as part of a bigger plan. And whatever you do, whatever coding, whatever integration and IT stuff, intelligent stuff that you come up with, all has that bigger context in mind. And I think that is what makes a difference. So in order to conclude today's session, Sudesh, if you had to summarize, if I had to ask you the question, why should schools come to you for help with video conferencing integration? what would be perhaps a simple, short answer?
Um, we've been doing this a long time, and now with remote working and cloud, this is not new to us. Our CTO developed the system 5 or 6 years ahead of the curve. We understand that, especially at the time of COVID, when you cannot be in the same room, that we can integrate video stuff, but also things like sending stuff to your accountant. We can integrate with your accounts package, whatever it is, whether it's Datev in Germany and Austria, whether it's, I forgot the one in Italy, whether it's Sage or QuickBooks or Xero, we can integrate with that. We can pull data and push data around without physical borders, and we understand how to do that, I think, better than most other providers out there. And this is also an opportunity to think about future strategy. And with the time, I know it's a very stressful time, but the initial panic is over. You have to start thinking, once we come out of this, what is going to be our strategy? And now is the time to start putting those strategies into place, and also trying out things like, okay, we will try limited video integration, or we're going to try some online platforms, and then building that into a strategy that gives people a competitive edge. I mean, as you know from your reporting, there's been a few school closures, and people who were not able to adapt. And I think that this is the main lesson, is that you have to adapt. We just happen to be with the right technologies ahead of the curve, because we thought that this was coming anyway. COVID has just focused everybody's minds on not only video integration, but integration so that you don't need to have people in the same room.
Exactly.
That's what I would say.
Okay. It's okay. Don't worry, don't worry. And finally, if any of our viewers would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it? I presume through email or through your Facebook page?
Yeah, Facebook page. You can go to our website, find us there. We're on Twitter. We're on we're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, of course. Or you can just Google us. We'll come up.
I'm adding the link to the website over here in the stream, and I'm also adding your email, which by now I know by heart, contact@intrinsiq.net. So people can definitely contact you over there. Sudesh, it has been a pleasure. I mean, we have these discussions practically almost on a daily basis, but it has been a pleasure sharing this discussion with everybody else out there. As for our viewers, we hope that you've taken away some tips with you from this, and we would definitely encourage you to get in touch with the team at Intrinsiq if you would like further information about any of the things that we have discussed. So thank you very much, and have a lovely rest of the day. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much.
See you
all later.
soon. Bye-bye.